Hi, sweeties. Well, I got to go to the kitchen at JMS and help make hot dog lunches, and it was very fun to be with my friends there. I'm sitting on the four-wheeler and would like to thank it for being my cameraman. And we're about to finish up old Hank, so I went to the library today and got us a couple of new stories. If you remember that Hank and Drover was having a fuss because Hank kept calling him the wrong name. You said I called you Dricker. Now get your story straight. Dricker or Drover? Drover, you can't have it both ways. Help! Before my very eyes, the runt crawled beneath his gunny sack, leaving nothing but his hiney exposed, sticking straight up in the air. I'm so confused. Come out of there. No, I can't stand this anymore. I don't even know my own name. Ah, there it is. You don't know your own name, but you're trying to transfer the blame onto me. You're a sick dog. Droger, and I'm not sure we can save you. Help! This is much worse than I thought. My mind began to race. Okay, try this. Take 2 aspens and go back to bed. I'm sitting in my aspen grove. One corner of the gunny sack lifted, and I saw an eye peering out at me. We don't have any aspens. What about cottonwoods? Well, they're trees. Oh, good. Thanks, Hank. I'm feeling better already. I stood over him for a moment, looking down at this really weird little guy that we know as Drover. Clearly, he had some pretty serious problems, but maybe our session had pulled him through the worst of it. I hoped so. In many ways, he was a nice little lunatic. Yet beneath that many layers of garbage in his mind, there lurked a wasteland. Oh, dear. Oh, this is funny. I heaved a sigh and I beamed him one last look of fatherly concern, and I made my way up the hill. The evening sun was drifting down on the horizon like a mother hen setting down on her nest. Slurp! Which reminded me that darkness was coming and that I had a very important job waiting for me. What is his job? Do you remember? What's he in charge of? He's the guardian of the chicks. Yes, it'd be a tough assignment, perhaps the toughest of my whole career. Tender chickies. Cheeping in the darkness of the night would bring all manner of villains into headquarters, all of them lusting after a chicken dinner. Would I be able to fight them off and save the little chickies? In this moment of quiet before the battle began, I turned to the vast computer screens of my mind and I called up the villains program. Browsed my way through the names and faces of all the villains in our file. There is Rip, Snort, Scranch the Terrible, Sinister the Bobcat, Buster Muggs, Willie and Junior, and Eddie the Raccoon. Then I studied the mug shots of other villains whose names we didn't even know. Various skunks and badgers, raccoons and bobcats and chicken hawks, owls, any one of whom could be the one to attack my chickies. Which would it be? Who would be the villain I would have to face in the grim darkness of night? I saw his face in my mind. I even know his name. Yes, I knew who the villain would be. I knew him very well. We had spent a lot of time together, shall we say, but I'm afraid I can't reveal his identity. Security reasons, don't you see? Chapter 12 is The Killer Strikes. Darkness fell like a curtain of darkness around the edges of something darkness fell. Shall we say it as it always does at certain times of day, usually in the late afternoon or evening? It happens every day. In other words, the coming of darkness was no big surprise, but it happens all the time. But on this particular occasion, there was a certain tension in the air. I could feel it in my bones. Not in the various steak and beef bones I had buried around the ranch, but in the bones of my own. There was tension in the air, and I could feel it in my bones. It was a strange sensation. I had a feeling, an odd, eerie, inexplicable feeling that something was about to happen. And it was a feeling of dread, a sense of foreboding. He wrote it as foreboding. Foreboding, let us say, somewhere out there in the darkness, some slouching, brooding creature was watching, listening, and plotting. Pretty spooky, huh? You bet it was. But the good part in all this scary stuff was that, well, I'd be right there at the yard gate to guard and protect the little slurps, the little chickie dinners. I mean, shall we say, and hey, when Hank is there to guard the chickens, what could possibly happen? At 10 o'clock, little Alfred came out of the house for the last time. He'd been checking the chickies every 15 minutes. Don't you see? But now it was his bedtime. Checking the chickies, let us say, making sure they were safe and sound, healthy and healthy and warm, that is. And at 10 o'clock, everything seemed fine. Dressed in his polka dot pajamas, Alfred came over to my sentry post near the yard gate. He seemed worried and concerned. He squinted out into the spooky deepness of the dark, then let out a sigh. Well, I've got to go to bed, Hanky. Reckon my chickies will be okay? Oh, sure, no problem. Let the rascals come. By George, if the ruffians wanted to test the elite troops of the security division, just let them try it. He opened the gate and stepped over to me. He put his arms around my neck and gave me a big hug. Hanky, promise you'll take care of my chickies. I looked him straight in the eye, raised my right paw in the air, and swore a sodden oath. Alfred, of all the dogs in the world, I'm one of them. If anything should happen to your chickies, I'll be the first to know about it. You have my word on that. This seemed to put his mind at ease. He smiled and closed the gate and said, well, nighty-night, see you in the morning. I licked I raised my paw in a gesture of farewell. I watched him go into the house and the door closed behind him. Moments later, the lights began going off one by one and the house grew dark and silent. I was alone with my thoughts, let us say, and several of those thoughts were pretty interesting. Oh, this is going to be hard on Hank, don't you think? Oh, I love you. It's a good day. It's breezy, but not cold and not too windy. Doesn't matter about hair. I love you. Take care of yourselves. Get outside and have fun. Be a solid citizen. Bye for now.